Ebby Steppach was a young woman on a mission to find independence. But following a very tragic encounter at a house party, her world came crashing down around her. In the aftermath of this party, she had planned to report her experience to the authorities. However, that would never happen, as 2 days later, she disappeared. What followed was an extensive search for the missing teenager, and the clues left in her absence told a tale of mystery and concern. But where did Ebby go? Who was responsible for her disappearance? And have all of our questions been answered? Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, folks. My name is Adrian, and welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime. Today we're looking at the mysterious case of Ebby Steppach. By the way, I have a huge update for you at the end of this video, so please stick around to the end to see what these new additions are for Coffeehouse Crime. Before we begin, and just to let you know that I post true crime and strange cases here weekly, so if that is your sort of thing, please consider subscribing to the channel, it really does help me out. And now, with that said, please grab yourself a coffee, pull up a seat, and get ready for the deep dive. This is the case of Ebby Steppach. Welcome to Arkansas, folks. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've been here before on the channel. The landlocked southern state is known for its abundance of park areas and expansive wilderness, and is home to the well-known Ozarks, which it shares with the states of Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma. I have to get this out the way, but on the mention of Kansas and Arkansas, please, America, explain.
So I am confusion. Why is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas? America, explain! Explain! What do you mean in Arkansas?
Unfortunately, Arkansas has one of the worst poverty rates in all of the United States. It's the nation's fourth poorest state, and poverty itself rests at 17.2%. But somewhat depressing economic facts aside, that doesn't stop this place from being truly beautiful. Mount Magazine State Park provides some of the best forest views the state has to offer. Devil's Den State Park and its cascading waterfalls are mesmerizing to look at, and the state itself provides some of the most jaw-dropping autumnal scenes this country has to offer. Stepping into our case today, we find ourselves located in the state's capital, Little Rock. And although I say capital, the city has a meager population of only 200,000 residents. With a population so small, it's actually quite hard to tell you what precisely the city's main industries are. It plays host to various headquarters and many firms and businesses, is a major player in the state's medical industry, and, quite contradictory, has 22 McDonald's restaurants, meaning in this city, there's a McDonald's for every 9,200 people. Anyway, trivial facts aside, it is here that we find the lives of Ebby Steppach and her family. Born on March 31st, 1997, Ebby Jane Steppach was the daughter of Laurie and Peter. She also had a brother named Trevor and a sister named Harris. Now, unfortunately, her parents had separated, but although her mother had remarried to a man named Michael, Ebby and her new stepfather got along very well. Affectionately nicknamed Ebster or Ebjane, Ebby was a young woman with big dreams and a noticeably fiery personality. She was funny, loved to make others laugh, and had a heart of gold. Attending Little Rock Central High School, her dream was to be a cosmetologist and a real estate agent. She was also studying 2 languages, Spanish and Turkish, and was also learning Hebrew with her grandma, Debbie. Ebby was your average happy young woman. Her family say she loved children, the colour purple, good music, and hot pockets. She was a true artist that loved photography, and, much like myself, loved the beach. In the year 2015, Ebby was in her senior year at high school, and being at that awkward age of 18, she was trying to find her own independence, yet still trying to find her own feet. This is probably why she decided to move out of the family house that year, and instead she spent time living between the homes of her grandparents, her friends, and her brother, Trevor. Ebby's recent choices in life, which included changing friends, changing school, and changing jobs, left some very awkward tension between the family. But despite moving out, it was very clear that she and her parents still loved one another. Saying that, she did begin to rebel in the year 2015, which unfortunately included her secretly going to house parties, flunking school, and hanging with the wrong crowd. Ebby genuinely had a good heart. I mean, sure, she may have been acting differently to the girl her family once knew, but through her transition into womanhood, she was understandably going through a very turbulent phase in her life. Moving into the month of October 2015, temperatures were starting to dive throughout the state. Ebby had skipped school multiple times in the recent weeks, which included the 21st of October. 2 days later, on the evening of Friday the 23rd, she went to a house party without informing her family. And tragically, while at this house party, she had one of the most horrific experiences a young woman could go through. Returning home the next day, she had some gut-wrenching news to share. She told her stepfather, Michael, that she had been sexually assaulted by 4 men the night prior, and what's worse, they had recorded the entire thing. The news devastated Michael, but he promised to do his best to support his stepdaughter. This started with her wish, as she wanted him to be there when she reported it to the police. But first, she wanted to think about it for a while longer. Ebby had already threatened 2 of the men by saying that she was going to report them to the police. But these things take time, and first she was desperately trying to build up her courage. Ebby then travelled to her grandparents' house, where she slept and lay in bed watching her favourite TV programme SpongeBob SquarePants for the rest of the afternoon. And after dinner they went out for frozen yogurt at TCBY located in West Little Rock. For the duration of the day, she kept the nightmarish events of the party secret from her grandparents and indeed from anyone else. And sadly, this is where the story goes from terrible to even worse. At around 7:50 p.m, she messaged Michael to ask him if he could go with her to the police. He agreed, asking her to meet him later that evening when she was ready. 10 minutes later, she waved goodbye to her grandparents, telling them she would catch up with them later that weekend. However, that catch-up would never happen. Ebby never made it to her mother and stepfather's home later that evening, and she never returned to her grandparents either. Any phone calls made to her phone elicited no response, and all of the text messages sent her way were ignored too. Now, it is confirmed that later that night, Ebby sent additional text messages to those she accused had assaulted her. And in these messages, she further threatened them to go to the police. It is also reported that she made 2 one-minute phone calls to the authorities. However, these calls have never been confirmed. It wasn't until the next day that Ebby's family heard from her once again. It was around 5:30 p.m. on October 25th, 2015 that she called her brother, Trevor. Now, apparently, she seemed extremely disoriented and confused on the phone call. Trevor asked her if she was with anyone, but she couldn't tell him. And when he asked her where she was, she said, "I'm outside your house." But after hanging up and heading out the front door, Trevor's sister was nowhere to be seen. He then called her back, asking, "Are you okay?" Ebby replied with, "I'm fucked up." Ebby sounded panicked, didn't know where she was, and couldn't tell her brother if she was alone. In fact, the only thing she could say and was sure about is that she was in her car. Although these details will eventually become ominously important to this case, at the time Trevor was not overly concerned. For now, Ebby had simply gotten lost. So he told her he'd be right back, hung up the phone, and then called his father to see if he could track her location. He then tried to call his sister back for a 3rd time. However, Ebby wouldn't answer her phone this time, and neither could her location be tracked. In fact, this was the last time her family ever heard from Ebby, because right after these phone calls, Ebby would vanish. Ebby was never seen or heard from again after this. She never called her brother back, never showed up at her mother and stepfather's home, never returned to her grandparents' house, and never turned up at school. She was actually due to meet a friend just 2 hours after her phone call with Trevor. Ebby and Danielle had plans to attend an ice cream party. However, she never arrived. And this is when Ebby's family and Danielle really began to panic. Cruel anticipation slowly suffocated those who knew her. The noise created in Ebby's silence had become deafening, and the anxiety created in her absence rendered her family almost entirely immobile. Fearing the worst, her family informed the authorities of her disappearance. But sadly, here begins the long list of police fuck-ups. Ebby had to be listed as a runaway, and as such, no search for her was initially conducted by the authorities. They further instructed the family to wait another 12 hours, as her disappearance had to extend past this amount of time for them to open up a case. And all of this was despite her family insisting that she would never run away without keeping in contact. Ebby's family and friends took control of the situation as best as they could. They handed out flyers across town, asked anyone and everyone in and on the streets, and spread the digital word online. Moving 3 days forward to October the 28th, and unknown to the Steppach family at the time, a security guard situated at Chalamont Park noticed an abandoned car sitting in a parking lot near the woods. Located far away from the city, Chalamont Park is found right on the edge of Little Rock. And when I say right on the edge, I really mean it. It's a housing estate that has been half built, with the remaining half still to be constructed. It's important to note that, at the time of Ebby's disappearance, the estate was still in the very early stages of development. Streets had yet to be carved into the forest, homes were still empty, and utilities and infrastructure were still half built. Located just north of Chalamont Drive is the beginning of a road that eventually had its construction scrapped to make room for a stadium. Back then, and actually even to this day, the road comes to an abrupt stop with cement blocks terminating the route. Nothing else of significance is nearby, including a children's park and a small community swimming pool. Although nobody was aware of it at the time, this car did indeed belong to Ebby. And parked underneath one of the lampposts, her 2003 silver Volkswagen Passat had remained there for multiple days. The security guard called the authorities and waited for 2 hours for them to arrive. However, no one ever turned up. It would take 2 more days and multiple extra attempts by the security guard for them to finally make the effort. And after running the license plates through their system, lo and behold, it was confirmed that the car belonged to Ebby Steppach. The investigating officers were left with a very puzzling scene. Ebby was nowhere to be found. Her car had an empty gas tank and a dead battery, meaning that the vehicle had been left running before eventually dying out. To add to this, the key had been left in the ignition, further suggesting that whoever had fled the vehicle had done so in a very hasty manner. Ebby's house keys, mobile phone, purse, makeup, and contact lenses all remained in the vehicle, all of which were scattered and broken in a haphazard manner. The details around her makeup is probably what concerned her family the most. Ebby was extremely precious about it, and had spent hundreds of dollars on this kit. Her mother was certain that Ebby would have not broken her cosmetics, and if she'd run away, she'd have definitely taken it, along with her phone and money. Despite these highly concerning details, the officers assigned to Ebby's case were apparently extremely uninterested in the case, and failed to take it seriously. It was later admitted that these officers didn't even bother to interview key witnesses, and to add to this, failed to check any local surveillance footage. Furthermore, they even tried to persuade Ebby's family that she had simply run away, and that she would eventually return home. The lack of competence from local authorities ultimately generated a lack of confidence in their ability to solve the case. And so, with that in mind, Ebby's family and friends began to look around for clues. Naturally, their main area of interest was her vehicle found up near Chalamont Drive. And shortly after the search began, one of Ebby's friends noticed a bad smell coming from a drain just several feet from where her vehicle was found. And now that she was concerned, her mother decided to call the authorities to inform them.
911, what's the location of emergency?
I just came out of a meeting with Detective Williams in regards to a missing person named Ebby Steppach.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
He said that the car was located in this park, and I brought my daughter here, who's a friend of hers, and we just started walking around, and I could smell decomposition. So I was just trying to call his phone, and he didn't call me back. Could you send somebody here to investigate? And this is where he said her car was found, and I brought my daughter Kaylee.
Okay.
She had been here with her before.
Sure.
We came here.
Okay.
We're going to have her look around, and as I passed the sewer, I could smell decomposition.
Okay, just a second.
And it does look like the area would be big enough for somebody to sit in.
All right. I want to see who we need to get out there, and then I will call you in just a few minutes, and we'll go from there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Bye-bye.
Despite several complaints about the foul smell coming from the drainage pipe, every single one of them was dismissed by Little Rock PD. Investigators on the case claimed they had used cadaver sniffer dogs in the area, and they would have certainly picked up any trace of Ebby if she were there. By the end of November, which marked 1 month since Ebby had disappeared, police exercised another extensive search of the area. But sadly, nothing was found, and as time passed by, desperation began to manifest. But sadly, her long days of silence would turn into insufferable weeks. Weeks into months, and months finally into years. And no matter how hard her community tried, Ebby was gone. By June 2017, Ebby's family announced a $50,000 reward to anyone who could help find her. By December 2017, they had even agreed to an interview with Dr. Phil, which gained nationwide attention. But despite their best efforts, nothing of value was ever found from these two things. Over the course of 2.5 years, the authorities continued to loosely tinker with Ebby's case. But most of her family and friends remained infuriated with their pathetic efforts. And eventually they hired a private investigator to do most of the heavy lifting. After interviewing the local security guard who had found Ebby's car, the guard said that he had seen her in the area with other men on 3 separate occasions. He further noted that, on one of these occasions, she was seen hugging and kissing one of them. It was also learned that, although the authorities had questioned all 4 men who had allegedly assaulted her, none of their phones were taken or even searched for the suspected video. Sadly, come 2018, and almost 3 years since her disappearance, Ebby's case had been sent to the cold case files, thus dashing any hopes that her disappearance would ever be solved. However, with this unfortunate news came a brand new opportunity. A detective named Tommy Hudson had recently retired from the force, but after learning of Ebby's case being transferred to the cold case files, he returned to focus on her justice. And in May 2018, on a gut feeling, or as they say, a hunch, he travelled to Chalamont Park to revisit the young woman's last known location. Standing in the exact spot her vehicle was found, Mr. Hudson looked in all directions with one critical question: which way could she have gone? Now, not even 60 feet forward from her vehicle lies a drainage system designed for excess rainfall. This drainage system includes a manhole which is used in the event of maintenance. Opening the manhole cover reveals a small ladder, and at the bottom of the short drop, a narrow pipe can be found. The pipe is roughly 15 to 18 inches wide, and considering Ebby's weight and height, her estimated shoulder width falls below these figures at 14 inches. It was determined that the drainage system located on Chalamont Drive ran 80 feet southeast into the abandoned section of the street. And on this continuing hunch, the newly assigned cold case detective decided to check the drainage pipe for himself. Although there had been several reports of a foul smell coming from the pipe, all of the previous detectives dismissed their claims, ruling it as just a sewage odor. Moving forward, cameras equipped with probes were inserted to both ends, and, concerningly, an obstruction was detected just 70 feet downwards towards the back end of the pipe. Authorities instructed a team to excavate the pipe in order to take a closer look. And tragically, it was at this moment that they found the cause of the obstruction. Inside the pipe were the skeletal remains of a human body. And the next day, those remains were formally identified as those belonging to Ebby. At long last, she had finally been found, not even a stone's throw away from where her own car had been abandoned.
Authorities are excavating human remains found at West Little Rock's Chalamont Park.
This is near the location where Ebby Steppach's car was found shortly after she disappeared in late 2015.
TG11's Caitlin Gardenhire is monitoring this story for new developments. And what are we learning, Caitlin?
Police found human remains inside Chalamont Park about 10:30 this morning. Since then, they have been out here. Little Rock Police, the FBI, the coroner, Public Works Department. We are getting a first look. The tape has just been taken down. This is a first look at where the human remains were found. This is the drainage pipe that they have been digging up since 10:30 this morning. So this could be huge news. This is the same park police last searched in 2016 in connection with the disappearance of Ebby Steppach. She was 18 years old when she disappeared in 2015, and this is the park where her car was found.
Cold case investigators decided that we needed to look in a drainage pipe that runs here down the back of the park, and we used Public Works to pull up the pipe and to dig it up, and once we got the pipe up, they were able to see that there was human remains inside that part of the pipe.
These are the drainage pipes that they have been searching since about 10:30 this morning. This is where they found the human remains. The remains are being sent off for identification. Little Rock police say they didn't get a tip about this. They told us that they were just wanting to further investigate. So hopefully we will have some more news and information about this later.
Ebby's family were of course devastated to hear the news, and although there was relief that her body had finally been found, it shattered any hope that she was maybe still alive. As the news began to settle in, anger started to take over, and that voice that questioned how the police could be so incompetent became louder and louder throughout the community. It is infuriating when you think about it, because Ebby's body was not even 60 feet from where her car was abandoned. People had reported the foul smell multiple times to the police, and somehow they still managed to fuck this one up. Her discovery seemed to open many other questions too, and many people wondered how she got down there in the first place. And of course, we'll look at those theories in just a moment. But first, her family had to grieve. When Ebby's remains were found, Laurie was devastated. In her own words, if Ebby had been found right away, we wouldn't have had to go through this nightmare. We could have put her to rest, and we could have found her killer by now. According to both Laurie and Michael, the department were very slow to interview key witnesses. And as you already know, they further failed to collect surveillance footage of the local area. Since most surveillance footage is deleted or overwritten after 28 days, they had missed their crucial window of opportunity. The footage wasn't only to track her whereabouts, but also to potentially catch her killers too. Further mistakes were made by the authorities. In the week after her car was discovered, Arkansas experienced several days of very heavy rain. Yet the authorities had accidentally left the trunk open through all of it, destroying Ebby's possessions and even evidence in the process. Speaking of heavy rain, with it happening shortly after her death, it is widely believed that her body travelled down the pipe because of the surplus of water. To this day, how Ebby died and who murdered her remains a mystery. The case remains open and is still classed as a homicide. Diving into this case, knowing the information available, and seeing what others have said about it, there are several potential theories as to what exactly happened to her. Beginning with the local police, they still genuinely believe that she may have gone into that pipe alone, which, if you ask me, is total bullshit, and a complete cop-out of an answer. Although he won't publicly reveal the details, Detective Hudson is certain this is a homicide due to the condition the body was found. However, for now, we don't quite know what that means. So, with that in mind, here are the potential theories behind Ebby's murder. So, without ruling out all possible scenarios, Ebby theoretically could have ended her phone call with Trevor, haphazardly destroyed all her makeup and possessions, left her car running, ran to the manhole cover, climbed down, and forced herself into the drainage pipe. But literally, why would she do this? Sorry, LRPD, but I'm calling bullshit on this one. The next scenario is one that a lot of us are likely thinking of. After threatening the 4 men that had assaulted her, at least one of them reacted with the fear of losing their free life by taking hers instead. It is possible that at least one of them was with her at the spot her vehicle was found, and in an act of panic, she was murdered to keep the truth from being revealed. The closest place to hide her body would have been the drainage pipe under the manhole cover, and her body may have been placed here as a matter of urgency. And with the fear of getting caught, her killers abandoned the vehicle as she left it. One other possibility is she was murdered in a different position, driven to the location her car was found, placed into the pipe, and then her killers fled on foot. Just to throw all the possibilities out there, she may have even been targeted and murdered by someone entirely unrelated to the house party. Ebby's former boyfriend believes that she may have had a bad trip and, in an affected state, climbed into the drainage pipe on her own accord and then eventually got stuck. However, this doesn't make much sense to those who had contact with her that evening. Although it's obvious that she was emotionally distraught, they all claim that she was coherent and sounded fully sober. The manhole cover is also extremely heavy, and she would have struggled to close the lid on herself. And those are the main theories for now. Like I said, the finer details of the condition of her body have not been publicly released, and to this day, her case remains unsolved. Sadly, for Ebby's older brother, Trevor, the emotional strain of his sister's story was too much for his heart to bear, and at the tragically young age of just 35 years old, he died suddenly of a severe heart attack. Of course, this had a devastating effect on Ebby's and his mother, who has now lost both of her children. Little Rock PD has stated that they remain committed to working collectively to resolve all cold cases, and more specifically Ebby's case. Due to the active nature of this investigation, few of the details regarding it are available to the public. But her killer or killers remain out there somewhere. For now, Ebby's death remains unsolved and without full closure. If the police had taken her disappearance more seriously at the time, then who knows how this case may have differed. But many believe it would have been solved a long time ago. Instead, the Steppach family and those around them still have many unanswered questions, many missing details, and a large hole in an already devastating story. And in the middle of all of it is the loss of their daughter, sister, and friend. In her family's own words, Ebby was loyal, battled for the underdog, and would lay down her life for those she truly cared about. Her heart was so big, and with it, she loved fiercely. She never left a room unless she knew you were smiling. And if there was a disagreement, she always asked for forgiveness to make things right. Anyone with any information on Ebby's case, please call the number below. And I think that just about wraps up our case today. Thank you so much for being here with me for another video by Coffeehouse Crime. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Of course, if any new updates come out regarding Ebby's case, then I'll let you know here in a follow-up video on my social media and on my Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, I have some very exciting news to share with you. I don't really talk about it much here on this channel, but I've made a few changes over there and I'd love to share it with you. For those of you who don't know what Patreon is, it's a place to support content creators, and if you support me over there, you get early access to my videos, exclusive content, and very other cool prizes. So I've wanted to experiment with my content a little bit, you know, stories that don't quite fit this channel, things that are outside of Coffeehouse Crime and true crime. And I think Patreon is a great place to try that out. For example, have you ever heard of the maple syrup heist? Do you wonder how coffee is roasted? And did you know that some of my videos never made it to YouTube? You'll also receive early access to all my new videos, special membership status in the Discord server, extra content like behind the scenes and Q&As, and very unique merchandise such as this. Honestly, I love this thing. It's engraved into the wood so you never lose the logo, and because it's made of walnut wood, which by the way is my favourite wood, it smells absolutely amazing. Supporting me on Patreon is greatly appreciated, as it allows me to experiment with different types of content while also connecting with you in a new and different way. So if you'd like early access, exclusive content, personal videos, merchandise, Discord membership, and much, much more, I'll leave a link down below. And by the way, this just has to be said, but this doesn't change anything about the YouTube channel. This is purely extra content that otherwise I wouldn't get the chance to do. Anyway folks, that just about does it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I honestly can't tell you how much I appreciate each and every one of you. You know what to do. As always, leave your thoughts on this case down below, subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and like the video if you found this one interesting. But until we see each other again, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.